Everybody take a seat. Let's get started. Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you here on behalf of GPS 4593. This morning. For those of you who are not familiar, GPS 4593 is a regional economic development partnership. The region includes all of Pine, Chisago, Kanabec, Isanti counties, and the city of Princeton. Our group has diverse representation, including city and county economic development, private and public entities, community and regional organizations, workforce and tribal partners, and others as well. Our current officers are President Heidi Steinmetz, she's the Kanabec County Economic Development Director. Also, our Vice President is Kathy George, the Sandstone City Administrator. Is Kathy here this morning? No? Okay. Our Treasurer right now is Leslie Souter, Community Development Director with the City of Pine City. And our Secretary is Carla Vita, the Community Development Director in the City of North Branch. So I'd like to just share a little bit more with you about GPS real quick. Sorry, gotta adjust. We've used this room a lot of times before, and never yet have we found a good way to use this microphone.
Flip it on your shirt.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so we'll hope this is in the right spot, and if not, I'll try to talk loud also, okay? All right, so, see when you talk up, you can't hear anyway in the microphone, right? All right, I'll just try to talk loud, and thank you very much for hearing this. The overarching goals of GPS are to strengthen and support our existing businesses, to work to attract new businesses into our region, and to offer educational opportunities to our members. We have strong committees that focus on efforts on key areas, including marketing and business attraction, and rural and broadband needs for our region. GPS also partners on various initiatives, and a new one that's been going on lately is the Inventors and Entrepreneurs Club. We also have a very active workforce committee, which is what has brought us all here today to our second annual Innovative Approaches to Career Readiness event. The Innovative Approaches to Career Readiness began about a year ago in May at our first event here with guest speakers representing Hutchinson High School's Tiger Path Academies and Cardinal Manufacturing, which is a student-run manufacturing company at the Oliva Strom High School in Wisconsin. The response to the May event last year was really quite amazing and generated a lot of excitement. So GPS followed that up by hosting a tour to the Cardinal Manufacturing on their development day back in October 2018. The past year's work was also formally recognized as the Economic Development Association of Minnesota's Program of the Year, and that's the award that you saw on the table as you came in. Our Workforce Committee Chair, Carla Vita, and was a driver of, and continues to be, of this initiative. She accepted that award for us on behalf of GPS at the January ENEP Winter Conference. So we're back here today to build off of those efforts, all the things that we've been doing during the last year. We're pleased to have you with us to hear more about resources available to schools, to students, parents, and businesses that will help us all take positive steps to make an impact on our region's workforce needs. It's our goal to spark innovation in each of you to carry back to your colleagues and the young people in your region. I think we'll all agree that a strong workforce contributes to strong businesses, strong communities, and together we can use this work to build an even stronger region. We heartily thank the Initiative Foundation for their generous financial and technical support of our efforts for this workforce work and for so much of the other work we do with GPS. We thank Lakes Region EMS for the complimentary use of their space here in this building, and we thank all of you for being here today. We are excited to have a really full agenda for you as you take a look. I'll do my best to keep us on track and as we introduce each speaker and go through the different things we have to share with you today. Feel free to get up to use the restrooms located in the back if you need to, or refill your refreshments, and we will take a short break midway through the program. So first off, I would like to introduce to you, or thank you for, first, I would like to thank the North Branch students and teachers who you maybe saw in the back. They prepared our breakfast, and they also prepared gifts for our presenters. And so they have a culinary program, and we have invited them to share a little bit about their program. And again, thanks for being willing to provide us with those things for our program.
We'll just talk really loud. So I'm Hannah Raleigh. I am the high school FACS teacher at North Branch. So I mostly have taught culinary classes, including Pro Starts levels 1 and 2. So I brought some of my amazing kiddos with. These are all level 1 kids that were interested in coming to talk to you guys about our Pro Start program, and also they wanted to help with catering with the food that we brought for breakfast. So one really cool thing that we have is we have collaborated with Grand Casino Hinckley. So they helped us prepare some of these breakfast items as well. So they came into our classroom yesterday and worked with each of these kids to help decorate, and they taught the kids all sorts of things about baking. So that was one really cool thing that we have with our program, is we have that relationship with them, and they come in and help the kids with specific labs or topics that we are discussing in class. So I'll just open it up to the kids and just have them introduce themselves and then talk a little bit about our program.
Okay, so hi, I'm Hannah Nagel. I'm a junior at the high school, and I just started doing like a little bit more cooking classes this year. And with the use of our new kitchen, it's been really interesting to like get a new like industrialized kind of feel, like how the restaurant industry works. And so that we have a little bit more of an idea when we go off if we were to go into culinary, which is really interesting.
Hi, I'm Natalie Radio. I'm a sophomore at North Branch. This year has been a little difficult for us because we started out in a classroom that had 1 sink, 1 stove, and 2 industrial fridges. And now that we're in our 3rd try of school, we finally got our new kitchen, and every kitchen has their own sink and stove and burners, and it's amazing.
Hi, I'm Maddie Getz. I'm a senior, and I just want to talk about one of my favorite things about the class. So we get to choose choice labs. So we get in our groups and we prep, figure out what ingredients we have and what the recipe we want to do. And we just go in and do it. And every kitchen has their own thing with the ingredients that we have. I just think that's cool.
I'm Amelia Millerberg. I'm a junior at North Branch. I've been doing cooking classes my entire high school career. It's a different one every try, sometimes 2 in one day. I don't know. It's really fun. Really cool.
Alright, my name is Roger Thomas. I'm a senior, also the choice labs that we get to do. We get to create our own dishes. And I think it really helps us like branch out and be better cooks. We have to like learn what we want to do and like figure it out all on our own. And it helps us be like creative with what we're gonna make too.
Hi, I'm Tristan Thomas. I'm a senior at North Branch High School, and I just really like post art blocks and lets us be creative. And then take cooking classes throughout my whole classroom.
Oh, I'm Sean Harrington. I just want to, before I start, how's the food? You guys had it? We had a lot of help from Grand Casino. They came in, they gave us some of the food, and then they gave us some toppings to put on it. They taught us how to, they told us what to do, and they're really great. It really helps us. After that, they talked to us about some online classes that we could take for free instead of having to pay $30,000 in tuition to start up in a culinary degree. But they told us about online classes we can do, and then we can test with real chefs in real time, and we can actually get started. They offered us buses to Grand Casino, and we can work there and get like internship, and then actually have a real job there. And they offer us a lot of opportunities there. We've also had field trips to the Grand Casino there, and we've had field trips to St. Scholastica.
St. Paul Tech.
St. Paul Tech. I went there, and they taught us a lot. We got to cook with real chefs. We got to cook with some of their people that are learning there, like some of the students at that place, and they taught us some really cool things. I got to make some very tasteful chicken. It was very nice. I love Post Art. It's got to be one of my favorite classes, especially with the new room this year that we got from our referendum. Is allowed us to have a real, actual professional kitchen instead of just some 20-year-old looking kitchen. It's brand new. Like I don't know if you guys haven't seen it yet. It's cool to come check out. I would say you should. Raleigh here, she may not look like it, but it's her first time teaching, and she is just the
I look
best.
like one of them. I'm used to it.
She is actually the best. She offers us something that I've never had in a cooking class before, which is choice labs, where let's say we have extra ingredients from the previous week and we need to just kind of get rid of them. Raleigh's like, she'll start the class and she'll be like, hey guys, I don't really have a plan. It's okay, just get it in the back and go pick what you want to make. We're going to make it today. And I think that's the coolest thing that there is in a cooking class, and it really offers us a lot of opportunities in this area. But we don't want just business in cooking classes. We want businesses to be everywhere in our school. We want a lot of help, and like, so recently North Branch had a field trip. We took any students that wanted to. We brought them to Pine Tech, yeah. And they could go and check out all the cool facilities they had there, and they could understand what they want to do. And some of my friends that went instantly decided that they want to go to Pine Tech. They knew right off the bat, they're like, this is the place I want to be. This is where I want to learn. This is where there are real mentors here. I can learn here. If we get more opportunities like that with other places, not just cooking, we can get like maybe some real professional, maybe not, but some artists actually to come in and teach some of our more artistic people in the school, or just maybe some more professional singers to come in and teach some choir kids. We could have all sorts of opportunities like this, and we would really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming out. It's going to be a good day.
Yes, I just want to say thanks again to all of you. I appreciate it.
Enjoy the food.
All right, so next I'm going to introduce to you, although he doesn't always need a real introduction, right? Luke Greiner with the regional analyst from the is going to be sharing.
Testing.
He's going to be sharing a presentation for you about labor market, education, and decision making.
Is
Yeah. I'm just going to grab my...
Thanks, Rebecca. Can everybody hear me all right with this thing? All right. Give it about 5 minutes before you regret giving me that thing. All right, so my name is Luke Greiner, and if I haven't met you, I hope to. So I'm a regional labor market analyst, which is a super boring title for what I think is an incredibly amazing job. I get to study and research trends of basically all aspects of our economy, particularly the labor market. So I'm primarily focused on what's going on with jobs, job trends, wages, where people work, who they work for, how much they make. And within that realm, I specifically focus on educational outcomes. That's just kind of a passion of mine, mainly the result of my own failures. So my goal is to really help people, prevent them from making the same mistakes I did, because I did things just dreadfully wrong. So I was asked to kind of provide some information. I did a parent night in Princeton a few years ago, and so this presentation is a bit of a, it's different than what I did at Princeton, but it's how I would present to parents. So I'm going to ignore the fact that a lot of you have probably already seen me. Some of you might not be parents, particularly for the students, hopefully. And I'm going to present this as if I was talking to parents. And all these slides will be available, and I can change slides to make them more specific for your community or things like that. But I think the intent was to help demonstrate how to share this information, because labor market information, aside from sounding just absolutely dull, it's incredibly complex, and it's difficult to package into an elevator speech because there's so many nuances. So I'll do my best. And who's keeping time? Somebody cut me off, please. Okay. All right, thank you. I will drone on, and nobody wants that. Holy smokes, this works. All right, so just to kind of set this stage, what occupational group do you think is supposed to have the largest amount of openings in, let's say, central Minnesota, which is, like a 13-county area? So what type of job do you think we are expected to have the most amount of openings?
Healthcare.
Healthcare? It's actually combined food prep and serving related. So a bit of a nod to the culinary students. This would probably be not what you're, some of the jobs in here would be what you're pursuing, but a lot of them are fast food positions. But we have a pile of them, and they shouldn't be discounted. They're excellent first jobs, and the people, the workers that go up through this learn a lot of valuable skills. But that's actually where we have a lot of openings, and a lot of that's just due to turnover. People getting in, getting experience, and moving on. So a lot of openings. What do you think is the most demanded occupation in this area, in 7E, which would be the GPS 4593 region? So what are employers demanding? What's difficult to fill? And we have a lot of openings. IT, programmers, nursing homes. Becky kind of nailed it there. PCAs, personal care aides, and a lot of those are placed in residential care and nursing facilities. There's a lot of openings, a high need for that, and we have a large concentration in the healthcare industry in this area. So what share of full-time job openings in Minnesota require a bachelor's degree or an advanced degree or something beyond a bachelor's degree? What percentage of our full-time openings, removing a lot of these because many of these are part-time, just looking at full-time, which typically come with full-time benefits and things like that. Any guess? 20, 30, 40. Can I get a 50? It's about 20%, so I think I did hear that. And that hasn't changed a whole lot. It didn't change. We just released the fourth quarter data. But so 1 out of 5 openings that we have that are full-time require a bachelor's degree or beyond. Or 80% of our openings require education less than a bachelor's degree. So we have lots of openings. That's partly driving some of this educational requirements. So these are job vacancies in central Minnesota, the blue line there, the green dots are the wage offers, what employers are hoping to hire people at. And you can see we have record numbers of openings. This is phenomenal news for recent high school graduates, soon to be recent high school graduates, college graduates, job seekers in general, because this puts them in the driver's seat. We have a slowing labor force growth, so it's constricting our labor force, and at the same time, employers are hiring. So one of the ways that they can increase the amount of applicants is to decrease their educational requirements, because education can become a barrier. So whereas maybe they would prefer somebody with a bachelor's degree, if it's not necessary, some occupations are licensed, you have to have a bachelor's degree to become a professional engineer and practice civil engineering. But for a lot of other occupations, you don't. So one way to increase the number of applicants is to decrease the educational requirements. It puts job seekers in the driver's seat. And if you were to break down that trend line and kind of look at what type of openings we have, this is really what it looks like. And it changes from quarter. We do this survey twice a year, but so it'll change from second quarter to fourth quarter a little bit and year to year. But for the most part, it looks like this. We have retail sales, combined food prep and serving related, which would be like fast food workers and cashiers. Those are huge occupational groups. That's why there's so many openings there. And a lot of it is held by high school students, moving up and out and getting that experience and getting the next best job. But I think it's important to understand that opportunity can be approached in many different ways. There's not just a single path to prosperity or to success, particularly for our recently minted workforce participants out of our high schools and colleges. So some programs prepare people to go directly into the workforce, and other paths are more like stepping stones and getting a little bit of experience here, using that experience, leveraging it to leap onto the next best job, and using that to kind of climb the career progression, to climb the ladder up into higher and higher wages. So this is survey data that I do with 10th graders. I've done it with a number of different schools, but this is from Southwest Minnesota, and I've done it actually in Cambridge last fall, and the results were basically the same, but I had a smaller sample. But I asked students, what is your primary source of advice about future education and career decision making? And it's basically family. I only give the option to choose one. So obviously, I think a lot of students are leaning on many different sources. I certainly hope. But if there's a single source that's most heavily relied on, most important, it's definitely family. And that's I think that's a good thing. I mean, hopefully nobody should have your best interests in mind as much as your parents. I think that bodes well for our community. But it also places a lot of responsibility on parents to help students make these decisions. And the last thing we want is schools thinking parents are doing this and parents thinking schools are doing this, and then students basically making this up as they go. That's actually kind of where I went. It didn't really work. And a lot of parents will tell me, yeah, no, my kids aren't listening to me. I say left, they go right. But when I ask them, students are listening. So it's important what we tell them. So parents are an influencer. Every teacher, every mentor, every adult that has a meaningful connection with any youth is an influencer, and I think that should be leveraged and recognized. And this, I think, sums up some of the anecdotes that I receive. Parents think they do best by convincing and helping their kids get as good a grades as possible to get into college, and then just kind of, my job is done here, let the education take care of it, right? And it's much more complex and nuanced than that. So good grades, there's obviously very little downside to that. There's opportunity cost, but beyond good grades, there's also experiences. And are we sacrificing experiences just for the sake of grades? And how do we balance that? Obviously, good grades are very important. And college is rarely a bad thing, but there's also a cost to college. And attending college and those costs is also really, really nuanced, which I'll get into in a little bit. How much time do I get? All right, cool. Along with that college piece is kind of the most basic reality that about 70% of our jobs in our economy, statewide it's about 64%, but in central Minnesota here it's about 70% require a high school diploma. And you can see it says a high school diploma or less, and the or less doesn't mean that you can get good paying jobs with less than a high school diploma. It means that those are jobs held by high school students. So they're typically not jobs that high school students want to remain in. At least when I ask, they say nope. Excellent experience to move on to something else, but the fact remains that a lot of our jobs don't require any higher education. Now you can always get more higher education and take those jobs, and it might help you in a lot of different ways, but our economy isn't necessarily structured for everybody to go to college and then get a job that requires college. And if college were free, I think we'd all be on board to send everybody to college. There's amazing experiences you get out of that, but it's not. There's a cost involved. And when I ask students what they're planning on doing after graduating high school, and this doesn't change much no matter where I go. And this is 10th graders, but it also doesn't change when I've asked juniors or seniors in high school, which also should plant the seed that, hey, these decisions are being made in 10th grade. And when you look at the data, what actually students do after high school, they basically are doing what they're saying in 10th grade. That means their mind is made up for the most part, and that their path is kind of in stone. And it needs to be honest, to get into college and to get out if they're planning on going and graduating with any hope on time. But you can see a lot of students plan on going to not only just college, but a four-year college. This number has been growing, which I think is fantastic, the share of students that plan on going to a technical college. But there was a few years where more students were planning on joining the military than going to a technical school, which is bizarre. Like statistically, about 1% of our population will ever join the military. So it also makes me wonder, what are those students doing that maybe weren't preparing for anything other than joining the military, and then have to find something else because their minds have changed or situations change. And then, because I focus a lot on educational outcomes, how much money students make after graduating, where they work, who they work for, things like that, I kind of ask myself, does any of this matter? I mean, obviously money matters, but if this is not the primary motivation of students enrolling and attending college, then I'll just shut up and go home, right? I'll just be quiet. So then I asked students, if you're considering college, why? And I gave a few options here, and for the most part, it's this one here, 33% said to be able to make more money, and the other 37 here to get training for a specific career. And I would take the leap in the assumption that the career they're looking to get is not a bad paying career, right? It's probably a respected, well-paying career. So my interpretation would be about 70% of our students are looking to college to increase their livelihood, increase their earning potential, and that's an expectation I think we need to understand as we're guiding students. Money is not everything, but if it's the expectation that going to college will increase your revenue potential, I think we need to understand that and factor that into these decisions. Money, 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 right? Super important. So, college is an excellent investment, typically, and I would never talk somebody out of going to college for the right reasons, but it is an investment. Just like buying a house, a car, investing in a 401k, it should be thoughtful. We should have people spending at least as much time researching their college programs as they do researching the next phone they buy or car, right? And that's not always the case. And attaining a degree does not guarantee financial success. And that, I think, lies a bit of the problem, because to me it's really easy, and it's kind of a loss-averse method of guaranteeing financial success to put all your eggs into the college basket and planning, and with the thought that that will guarantee a $60K a year job or something like that. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. And that's how you get people that are disgruntled or have bad experiences because their expectations might not be realistic. not all great jobs require college, and not all college graduates get great jobs. That, in its most basic sense, is how we should think about the labor market and education. So it takes some planning. And just as an example, so these are bachelor degree graduates out of, I just took the lowest performing programs based on wages coming out of college. This is wages, median earnings for college graduates, only successful ones, not looking at any dropouts or stopouts, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and 6 years after completing a bachelor's degree in these areas. And you can see that none of them have topped $20 an hour by their 6th year after completing a bachelor degree. Now, I'm not saying that these students are failures, but if you're leveraging and borrowing and banking on making much more than that, and that is your primary driver of going to college, maybe we need to rethink some other factors like, what do I really want to do, and how much money am I willing to sacrifice in order to chase my passion, and how should I be borrowing accordingly to make that happen. Because higher education is incredibly important for a lot of occupations, particularly some of the licensed occupations. You just simply cannot practice without getting that degree. It'll be impossible. But for other jobs, it's much less of a requirement. So it really, really depends on the type of job that we get. And oddly, I feel like a lot of our educational decisions are, visiting a college, figuring out a college we want to go to because it feels fun, it feels like a good place, and then trying to figure out a major that we could probably do or seems like a good time. And then after that, sometime in college, figuring out what the heck we can do with it. And that's just backwards. It doesn't make much sense. College is not cheap. And it all comes down to getting a job. I mean, that is the most realistic purpose of college. There's a lot of idealistic benefits to college, but it all comes down to a job. That is kind of really what it's meant to do. So it's really beneficial to start thinking and focusing on the job that we want to get first. And then from there, figuring out what type of education we need or experiences could help benefit us. The culinary students today are a prime example of getting experience to either understand that, yes, this is exactly what I want to do, this is a good fit, that's perfect. Or no, holy smokes, I don't like food actually, I just like eating it, right? That is equally or maybe even more valuable, right? Those experiences will help their decisions. Without those experiences, then we're kind of rolling the dice on whether or not that path is going to turn out to be a good fit, or am I going to have to change majors while I'm in college, or am I going to have to go to college and I wasn't planning on it? And all this, keep in mind that the longer you go to college, the more it costs. The more it costs, the less likely you are to complete. And the more times you change majors, the longer that process gets spanned out. So really, the better we can understand where our passions lie and really what we want to become, the better off. Again, college isn't cheap. These are the annual costs. It's not unbearable, but we should always be keeping in mind our expected return. So just like any investment, we have a cost and then a return, and we have that information. You can get that information. It doesn't need to be a surprise after maybe racking up student debt and then figuring out after the fact that you can't afford to pay it. That's just not a good situation. This slide here kind of explains why focusing on the job, or at least understanding our labor market, is really important. Probably more important than how long you go to college is what you major in. So this is from the class of 2010-2011 out of Minnesota colleges. And these are median annual wages for these students. It's 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years after they successfully completed their degree. But you can see at the bachelor's degree, associate degree, and certificate, there are programs that produce graduates who have low earning potential. And at the same token, there's the same bachelor's, associate, and certificate that produce graduates that have incredibly high earning potential. What the difference is the skill set that those schools provided them with. What they chose matters. And that's why throwing a dart at a degree dartboard is just a bad plan. It's, to me, setting yourself up for failure. And again, loss averse, more education can be better than less education, but you have to consider the cost. It'd be no different than me telling you, get the biggest house you can possibly buy, borrow as much money as you can, and that way you have it, right? That's the exact same mentality that we use with education, without any regard to the fact that you can always buy another house or a bigger house. You can upgrade your education in the future. What if the house is in a bad neighborhood, a place that you don't end up wanting to live in or something like that? Same thing. What if my degree that I've dumped all my eggs in this basket is not what I'm interested in, right? So yeah, you can overbuy education, and it should be really thoughtful throughout the process. So what if your student does not want to go to college? Well, I don't think that's a doom and gloom scenario. I've shown you that a lot of our jobs, in fact most of our jobs, don't require college. So within that, how do they get to the good jobs? So they need to explore careers and work. Just being around people that work and understanding how our economy functions in the terms of labor, what people do, that is absolutely vital, because that will help guide them to understand this is an area that I want to go to, or no, that's not a job that I have any interest in. And the best jobs, if you don't want to go on to higher education, require skills. And skill is not synonymous with education. There are highly skilled, highly compensated people with high school diplomas. And if you substitute education for skill, you're missing the mark, and you don't understand how employers value labor. So it's best to separate those two. Education can provide skills, and if those skills are valued by employers, that increases our earning potential. But then there's also skills that employers provide themselves, or people gain through on-the-job experience, or industry-recognized credentials, things like that. 2 minutes, perfect. So about 30% of these occupations here that require nothing more than a high school diploma have median annual wages of $40,000 a year or more. And there's about, 1 in 6.5 of those at the 75th percentile pay $60,000 a year more. So if students are aligning their passions and their aptitude well, they're going to be up on the high end of that, particularly with a little bit of experience. So I would stress that we shouldn't necessarily be concerned with students that don't plan on going to college, or if your student isn't ready or doesn't want to go to college or doesn't have the interest right now. That should not be a doom and gloom, what are we going to do with this poor sap scenario. That's fine, but they need just as much careful planning as those kids that want to go to college. No matter the route that they take, it takes a lot of planning to end up with a successful career. Some of the best ways to bolster your earning potential is to understand what employers want in terms of skills. A lot of these we get right from our high schools, particularly high schools that are bringing in employers and kind of connecting their curriculum to employment. Oral and written communication skills. Had I known that employers cared that my spelling is dismal, I probably would have applied myself a little bit more. I thought spelling was just an exercise to be ignored thanks to spell check. It's embarrassing when I have to write in front of people now, right? So that's something I wish I would have known. Integrity, that's incredibly difficult to teach, but a hallmark quality of good employees. We want to avoid that situation where they graduate and don't know what they're doing. We have, these are some of the highest paying occupations that typically are held by people with no more than a high school diploma. I think their median wages here in Minnesota are proof that you're not destined for destitute without a degree, but they do take skills. You don't just fall into those occupations. You have to have very careful planning and probably put yourself on the right track to gain those. Thank you very much for your time. Does anybody have any questions?
Luke, I always enjoy your presentations and learn something every time, but
Thanks.
I was surprised to hear a fishing scientist only makes $18 an hour after 6 years. That slide you know, I think of somebody with the DNR, they
So-
sweeping the floor probably makes that kind of.
So keep in mind that that is the degree that they attained, not necessarily the occupation they got. So like conservation, forestry, I mean, heck, I would love to be a marine biologist, but the job that I get might be limited. You know, I might have limited employment opportunities, so maybe I'm working at Walmart instead until an opening comes up. Yes?
I will say I'm very grateful that you're nerdy by nature. This was very helpful information. I'm wondering, is it a possibility of getting the PowerPoint?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Will you be sending it out, Rebecca? Della? Yeah,
Just
for
let me
sure.
know, my business card's on the table here. If you want anything, just make sure to reach out to me. I have a question for you, Luke.
Yeah.
Out of those kids that go into college, do you have any idea how many actually graduate or complete their degree?
Yeah, so, you know, it's roughly like 44%, something like that. And that's another thing. I mean, I hope nobody gets the feeling that I'm discounting college or anything like that, but the more our students understand what they want to do, the better success they're going to have in college, because they'll know why they're there, right? And college can be really stressful. Some of the classes are very difficult, and it's expensive to boot, so knowing what purpose you're there for can make a big difference in college success. It's not high enough.
And Luke, you will take this on the road, correct? So to any of the schools, if they request it?
It's definitely a possibility. So I consider requests. It works out better since my time is limited and I cover like a third of the state. The more people you get, the more likely it is to happen, for sure. Yeah.
Have you presented to families? I mean, families are the major influence of how do you get this message into the families' hands?
It's really difficult. I've done it once at Princeton. I've done it a couple times down in Minneota, it's just north of Marshall. And I've never had real big numbers of parents. And parents are just, they're busy. Some of the things that I think about though is, where are our parents during the day? They're working. So how can we leverage our employers to help message? Because the parents are working at all our business establishments. They're showing up there. These are the same places that want to showcase what they have to offer. So first of all, make sure our workplaces are excellent places to work. You know, is your recruitment method the children of your current employees? And two, how do we help our employers pass this type of information down through their staff? That's one thing that I've thought of, because corralling parents is much more difficult than prodding students into a gym and letting me just speak at them.
One more question. So Luke came to Princeton, and we had him talk to parents on competency, and our competencies are well dependent. If you can do some kind of sweeper with it, and get them there, they're going to wonder why we don't have it. We never say, the ones that came were like, oh my God, we should have this up here. So once they get a taste of it, they want more.
If you gave me a t-shirt gun, I'd use the heck out of that thing. Maybe that helps. I've been asking my boss for one for years. I don't think he thinks I'm serious. Thank you very much for your time. If there's any questions,
Okay, thank you very much again to Luke. Next, I would like to introduce to you Les Engel, the president of Engel Metallurgical and the president of Central Minnesota Manufacturers Association, and also Chuck Henches. All right, he is the assistant professor at St. Cloud State University. And they are going to talk to you today about building a skilled workforce through certified youth apprenticeships. So thank you.
We're ready. So, good to be here, and interesting to have a meeting with a bunch of students. Normally I go to meetings with all manufacturers and adults. But following up on what Luke said, there was a key piece, two words in it there. One, he didn't say it a lot, was follow your passion. You want to look for things that you really enjoy and have fun doing. I explained to my kids, and I mean they're all older than your parents now, I'll give you a clue, is you want to work for 50 years doing something you dislike? Sounds terrible. And I'm here to tell you there's a lot of people doing that right now. So follow your passion. And the other one of why we're here, Chuck and I, is the experience issue he talked about, to get experiences. And so for CMMA, or the Central Minnesota Manufacturing Association, one of our big issues is working on youth apprenticeship. So it turns out that 16, 17-year-old youth can work in businesses. Now on our end, the manufacturing businesses that people tend to look at as they think is being more hazardous, why you can work in those environments. And so one of the things that we worked on with CMMA is to develop the youth apprenticeship. If anybody's familiar with the activities at the Wright Technical Center, it's down in Buffalo. The person there that's one of the guys heavily involved is a fellow named Mark Lee. Why, they have a huge program on this and have been extremely successful at doing this. In fact, they had helped us in the central Minnesota area to build that up and get it going. And so we've been working on developing and helping businesses and schools to get connected. And that's the key piece, because we had all the businesses, and then we had to go figure out how to get connected to the schools. And so we've been working on that and to develop all that. And what we've done is we've partnered up with the folks at St. Cloud State, which is Chuck's the part of that, in terms of to go help make more contacts and help to set them up. And so Chuck's going to explain to you how that works. He's the guy doing that. And like I say, anybody that's interested in looking for help with apprenticeship, CMMA will go out to help you. Chuck's one that'll help. There's others in our group. We've done it, and we can help you get set up to do it. So without further ado, we'll let Chuck explain how this works.
I don't know, I'll talk more about, I guess, about the relationship that we've developed with CMMA. The reason this came about is about a couple of years ago, one of my colleagues is on the CMMA board, and CMMA was really talking about we need to develop some of these apprenticeship programs through central Minnesota. In our role at the college, me and my colleague, we do a lot of school visits. We're in probably 50 to 60 schools every year. We know the technology education teachers, we know a lot of the ag ed teachers. So what we see as a real barrier a lot of times is that there's really a lack of communication between the business and industry people and the schools. When we approach businesses a lot of times as an educator, the first thing they think is they want us to write a check. That's what they want. And that's not a true partnership. And so working with CMMA, getting in contact with some of the business and industry people, and then also with our contacts throughout central Minnesota and through the state of Minnesota, on the teacher side, the educator part, we're really trying to develop these partnerships. And that's really the key. Some of the strongest programs we see in the state of Minnesota are programs that have that strong partnership. And what we mean by partnership, it may be a financial resource, but it's the tours, it's the employee of the business industry coming in and doing public speaking. They can do maybe assessment of some of the projects the students did, but it's just more than just that financial commitment or financial support. So really what we've done is St. Cloud State, and my role is really the matchmaker. It really is understanding the needs of what the business and industry is looking for, and what are the needs of that local employer. And really sitting down and saying, okay, is there a possibility for us to do a certified youth apprenticeship program here? And if there is, our role is really to go through the documentation and the paperwork or whatever it needs to be done, but really sitting down and saying, okay, this is just the start. This is just the start, this apprenticeship program. Where can we go from here? And I think that's a big part of that success of that story of getting apprentices out. So we've been working now for about a year and a half. We've like I said, worked with CMMA, and we've got in central Minnesota, we've probably gone through 12 to 15 apprentices that have gone through the program or are currently in it. We typically see about, at the most, 1 to 2 students per school. Not a lot, it's not a large amount of students that are going into it. But the program really is just like we talked about, really developing that skilled workforce. It's students that really want to go right into that business and industry after high school, or maybe possibly go into a 2-year school. I'll go off what just got said before. I teach at the university. We see way too many students that walk through their door that should not come. They're not following their passion. They're not going into the right area because they didn't have the right information. And so if we can get them sooner, the 16 and 17-year-old, and say, hey, hey, welding's a great career. Being a machine operator is a great career. Assembly area is a great career for you. And finding that out sooner than later is really a great thing about the apprenticeship program, because it really is that skilled development that they can hopefully find a passion in. And we've had stories where students go into it and say, you know what, I want to be a welder. And they work at the industry for a month and they're like, this is far from what I thought it was going to be. That's a success story, because they're not going into an area, they're not spending time on an area that is not going to be something they want to do. So I think that partnership that we've developed is really, really, really key. And so, and there's more, there's more stuff that you want to know about the apprenticeship program. You can definitely let me, or Della know, and you can get a hold of me. But it's students would like to get the 450 hours a year is really what it is. And that there's a safety aspect to it, and there's a certain amount of safety that's got to be done before the student can actually work into the industry. And you get paid, yes. Yeah, definitely. So I don't really want to get into the technical part, but that's sort of the relationship we developed with CMMA, and it's been going very well, and the interest is phenomenal. I mean, business and industry are excited about it, the schools are excited about it. It's just a win-win for everybody. Win for the students, win for the school, and win for the business partner. So, anything else?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it.
What apprenticeships have you developed set up? Okay.
What areas?
What kinds? Everything from welding to doing some CNC. We've had students go into the engineering aspect of it, the design part of it. Those are probably the assemblers, mechanical. There's a lot of students are doing some of the assembly types of things in the plant. We see some, excuse me, some of the apprentices who go in, and the business will say, we've got 4 main areas in our plant, and they will go through the first couple weeks and go and visit each area and get an idea of that process, and then deciding, where would be the best fit for that student. Along with one of the things that the business and industry really needs to have is a mentor, is somebody that's going to sort of guide that student. And that's been a great story too, is that these supervisors are grabbing these students and saying, okay, this is a great path for you, or you're good at this, and some of those success stories too. So,
how do they get started?
So the biggest thing is really sitting down with developing that partnership, sitting down with a business partner in a school. And saying, okay, this is what we need to do in order to do it. And there's stuff on the MDE website. The program's through Minnesota Department of Ed. The application process is pretty streamlined. They've done a really great job of that, of streamlining it. So really, some of the key components that a school needs is that they've got to have a program of study. So they need to have a career and technical education program approval in our area, specifically manufacturing. The teacher needs to be a career and technical education teacher, also has to have that licensure. Once that application is filled out, the business and industry needs to send in some safety documentation, handbooks, things like that. That gets sent to MDE, and then it goes through the approval process. Typically within a few months, if they've been really good about turning that around, it gets back, and then that approval process is approved. At that point, it's really determining, the business really needs to determine where do we want to put an apprentice. Where would be a good fit? What is the skill set we're looking for? And they need to communicate with the teachers about some of the skill sets that those students really need. And once they determine that, then the next thing is really the teachers and the work-based coordinators can recommend maybe 2 or 3 students that can go and possibly do for an interview process. And really the interview process is identical to all the rest of their employees. They go through the same screening, the same types of things, and then whether or not they hire them or not, and start the process.
So is the school responsible to find the industries in the area, or is that something CEM does?
We will help you to do that.
That's sort of our job. That's really our job.
The students that have interest is to let us know, because then we've got the connections, mainly in manufacturing. You realize you can do this in healthcare, you can do it in all kinds of careers. Obviously, we're focused on manufacturing, But no, and if you get a hold of us, then we go look for the partners and set up that first meeting. Because the manufacturers, the flaw in this connection scheme is that we don't have a way to get the students.
Right.
So the teachers have the students, the schools have the students.
So if we did the application through MPE, how long does that process take?
Usually within a
That's
few,
the time it
yeah, usually within a few months, usually you can have it turned
Yeah.
around. Yeah, yeah. There was a question back there first.
Yeah, I'm a work-based learning coordinator at Chisago Lakes High School. We just started the program this year. We started off with 1 kid, and we're up to 7 students out on our worksite learning program, so it's pretty exciting. Next year, we're just got grants running over the summer as well, and then we're meeting with students to set that up for next year. We have 4 program, so we're super jazzed about it. So we're making some headway.
That's awesome. That's great. I don't know. Is there? I don't know about the grant. Can you talk a little bit about the grant you got for the summer?
Yeah.
What was that through?
Sorry, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Was the grant for work-based coordinators to work in the summertime with the students? Is that what it's for?
What we're having problems with are block schedules. We only have 4 blocks in a day, and so when you run into that, you have a lot of kids. We want them to have a prerequisite. We have tons of CE courses over at Chisago. We want them to have a prerequisite before putting them out on the job site. So we actually have manufacturing classes there. So we want the kids to have those manufacturing classes before we put them out there. So even though Howard was our first placement, they were kind of our driving force behind starting this program. So we put them over at Howard first. We wanted them to make sure they had that background in CPG and the background in manufacturing before putting them there. So with the 4 block schedule, we were running into not having enough time to get the kids out there. So we're giving them the taste of it during the summer to be able to see if they were enjoying it, and then kind of continuing it on through their senior year.
Yeah. One of the neat components about this is it's a little bit different than the work-based that we typically see is that the students go out just during the school day. The YAP program is really sort of flexible, that you can go after hours, summer hours, weekends, things like that, as long as they follow the child labor laws. But yeah, so there's a little bit more flexibility than typically you'd see with the regular work-based.
So what if somebody is out of school for a couple of years and not in the school where the school can connect you to these apprenticeships? What if they're out of school for a couple of years and say, okay, I need a skill? What do they do? How do they get into one of these apprenticeships?
I think there's an adult apprenticeship program.
There are adult
I don't know much. Oh, maybe Rich Wessel can.
Yeah, I can answer that. I'm with the Department of Labor and Industry. There's a registered apprenticeship that someone who's an adult who graduated from high school can go into. They do the trades, they do manufacturing. They're starting to do IT and repair as well. So
And where does one go to find that?
to the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, you go to their website and it has all the information on registered.
You can go to, I think all the workforce centers support all those connections. So the workforce centers as well. Because this program is really about how to, normally, to work in the manufacturing area, you'd have to be 18 years or older. And this is tied into workers' comp requirements to be able to have insurance. And this program permits the 16 and 17-year-olds to work in that industry. You know, and still, and the workers' comp people will cover it because of the controls on the program. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thanks.
Anybody's looking for help, let us know. We'll be here.
All right, thank you to both of you. Next, we're going to, move on to have you hear about youth skills training through the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. And here to talk to you today is Rich Wessels, the project manager.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Very good. So I'm Rich Wessels. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. I'm the project coordinator for the Youth Skills Training Program. And this is another option, very similar to what Les and Chuck just described through the Minnesota Department of Education. This is an addition to, so it's another option to try to get students into these paid work experiences and get that exposure, that paid learning to help them make those decisions.